Daily News Editorial Board wants to welcome Gary Israel, who's running for District 5 for the Estero Village Council. Thank you for joining us today, Gary.
My pleasure.
Can you take the first couple of minutes here and talk a little bit about your background and how long you've been in Estero and those kinds of things?
Okay, well, I'm a proud Buckeye. I'm 63 years old. Moved to Lee County almost 20 years ago, 1996. I spent 10 years working in retail advertising with the news press from 2000 to 2010. Halfway through that 10-year period, commuting from North Fort Myers to Bonita got to be a little tedious, so we moved into Estero, into Stony Brook. It'll be 10 years this coming July 4th weekend.
And you're in business here in South Lee County?
I am. Through Rotary Connections, I was given the opportunity to launch a magazine for the Estero community called Estero Lifestyle, and we've been publishing that better than 4.5 years since September 2010.
And you came to Estero in 1996 from where?
I came to Lee County in 1996, Estero in 2005.
Okay. And when you moved to Lee County in 1996, where was that from?
Well, I moved from Orlando. Like I said, originally from Ohio, spent 13 years in Southern California, and then a job opportunity brought me to Orlando, and I migrated down to Lee County.
Tell us a little bit about the magazine.
Well, the magazine is part of a company called Lifestyle Media Group. And the offices originally, when I got involved, were in Weston. Now they have migrated a little bit north to the Fort Lauderdale area. They have 12 magazines on that coast, and like I say, we launched the Estero Lifestyle magazine in 2010 at the bottom of the economy. The president of the company and I are connected through Rotary, and his mother lives in Cape Coral, and he when I put out an e-blast saying, "Hey, I'm looking for something to do," he says, don't do anything till we talk. And he set me down in his office and says, "You know, Estero is exactly where Weston was 10 to 12 years ago. You have affluence, influence, and no identity." And he says, one thing a lifestyle magazine can do for a community is to help establish and enhance that identity. And I think that's what we've been doing these 4.5 years. We're all about highlighting and showcasing the positive people, places, and events in and around the area, so that our residents keep informed in knowing what's going on, have opportunities to join in some of those activities if they're open to the public and on an annual basis. And we've been able to uncover some pretty interesting people along the way living in our community. Our first inaugural cover story, was Todd Eldridge, 6-time U.S. Olympic figure skating champion, who was living in Estero, much to almost everyone's surprise. He and his coach had established an Olympic training center at Germain Arena, and he was actually coaching ice skating over there. And we've gone the gamut from the Estero High School principal to most recently we've showcased a gentleman living in Spring Run who was a Secret Service agent for 5 presidents. Coming up in our March issue, we've got a profile on a gentleman, also part-time resident of Spring Run, who was ambassador to Rome for the United States and is working on a global hunger initiative.
You couldn't help but notice in the watching the community as you do the magazine, made note of cityhood and being Florida's newest municipality and such. But going forward, to what degree would the magazine be involved with covering the day-to-day activities of city council and the?
Well, that's not a lifestyle magazine. I leave that to the newspapers and to to those types of publications. We're on the things that really make an impact in the community, rather than news press releases and those day-to-day articles. We're trying not to be very political. We just want to keep give an accurate representation of what's going on, and so the people living in our community, as well as our snowbirds, can read those things during the summer months when they're back north as well.
And so if you're elected to the village council, what would you see as the first tasks that you would need to undertake?
Well, we have to establish the government, As most of the candidates have alluded to, we don't even have a pen and a place to put it. Okay, so we need to start from scratch and build this. We need to get establish some parameters from which developers will work with us, and we have to enter into negotiations with Lee County for the services that we're going to contract with them, and just get a firm basis for going forward.
I assume one of the first things you do would be hire a city manager. Are you looking to hire an interim manager at first, or would you like to take some time and get somebody for the long term? Or what qualities would you be looking for in a manager?
Well, that is one of the first needs of this light government form. I think one of the most critical things is that city manager ought to have experience in Florida. Florida is not the same as other states. So I'm not sure that a national search is the way to go if we can find somebody within the state of Florida to do that. It may be for sake of time and to do an interim situation, but that remains to be seen. A lot of decisions are being formulated even though we don't have an elected village council yet. And so we'll take those recommendations that are coming in a transition form to us and see what everybody thinks about them.
As far as the characteristics of a manager you would be looking for, talk a little bit about what those would be.
Well, I think I look for integrity and honesty. I look for somebody who has strong negotiation skills, who has some some common sense and will show leadership. We're expecting that person and any advisory people that report to him to give the best and highest quality recommendations to the village council.
Are you looking for government experience, somebody from the business sector, or either or?
Either or, I think. Again, having experience in the state of Florida in these matters, I think, is a real plus. So that we don't want any surprises.
As far as departments that the new village might want to set up first, or are there any that you think the village ought to go for right away?
Well, an architectural committee, planning panel, we have zoning, safety committee wouldn't hurt, a medical committee to foster the proposed relationship to a medical center location within the city. We want to maintain the current standards as high as we possibly can, architectural standards and quality of life, and what businesses come in in this respect. And I think we have to have our act together as ironclad as we can, so that we can effectively deal with developers and other people, other interests who are seeking to get into Estero.
Those would be advisory committees that you would be looking at. What about as far as the structure of the city government? Is there a department that ought to be set up right away?
Not right away. We need the city manager. We need a city attorney. Probably a clerk. I don't know if we need some ancillary office type people, But you know, we've committed to the Estero community that all of us, that we're going to try to maintain this as government-light and not spend any more money on things like that than absolutely necessary. We have a vast, a wealth of information and experience living in Estero, and so I'm sure that we'll be able to put people on advisory positions that will really enhance this whole process.
Speaking of citizens that might be involved, the ECCL has been very involved up to this point, bringing cityhood to where it is today. Once the city council is placed, what will the ECCL's role be going forward? Well,
ideally, it would be it would fall back to an advisory position, maybe not as an entity. I'm not sure really the ECCL is needed, but there are some talented people on the ECCL that might take chair positions of committees and advisory groups to maintain some continuity in the process. But you know, it really needs to be. We've already got 2 ECCL members elected to the village, and so that's probably enough, so that we have a diversity in thoughts and ideas and opinions, so that you know, that we can make some sound judgments going forward.
They've indicated that they're going to stay active as an organization. If I'm hearing you correctly, they would not necessarily have any particular advantage in terms of swaying the village council.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't see it that way. I'm sure. You know. I'm sure there are people who will listen to them, and many of their ideas are good. But I still think whether it's ironclad or in a perfect world, that it still needs to be reviewed and by independent eyes and so forth, and get a feeling of what's going on. But you know, all I know is I speak to a lot of residents in the process of doing what I do on a daily basis with Estero Lifestyle magazine, and everybody's feeling is that they really didn't want to see the ECCL just take off one hat, slide over 2 seats, and put a new hat back on. That we really wanted to create some diversity on this first village council, so that we had as much community input as possible.
If we could talk a little bit about the budget. We've heard different figures as far as the surplus that the village council will have coming in. There will be a surplus there. Is that something you would look to save, or is that something you think ought to be spent right off the bat?
Oh no, we need to work very cautiously with budget items. You know, it's anticipated that we're going to roughly have somewhere in the neighborhood of about $3 million a year for the first 5 years. You know, I think we should tread very cautiously. We don't need to necessarily go out and build a monument, a city hall or something like that. We're going to have to lease and find our way in the early days, and see how we can involve businesses and the community to take those major steps. You know, I've been a Rotarian for nearly 20 years, and what drew me to Rotary and what I stand by in my run for this office is the Rotary 4-way test. And that is, of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? And I think that integrity would work for any organization, even in our personal lives. And I think we have promised the Estero community in this process of getting to the vote on incorporation in November through this election that we're going to be totally honest and upfront. It's going to be fair to everybody. It's going to build goodwill and better friendships, which to me means that we need to repair some relationships with Bonita Springs. and other neighboring communities, and we also have to repair our relationship with our county commissioners, because they're a source of funding for us that we just cannot be in constant turmoil and get any place. And then will be beneficial to all concerned. That's the greatest thing. You know, I spent 2 years in the process of reaching district governor status in our district, which runs from North Manatee County to Marco Island and inland. And in that role, it's basically building consensus, getting 56 clubs in my case that year that are independent and autonomous to develop at least a consensus to get them to move one direction or another, and whether they, regardless of to what extent they benefit from that movement. And I think that's one of the things that's really important about it, for any of our village candidates to do, is to be able to project that back to our community.
You mentioned Lee County and as a source of funding.
Mm-hmm.
One source of funding through the county has always been impact fees.
Mm-hmm.
There's some discussion now as to where they ought to be properly set. The village would have some latitude as to where to set its own. Where do you think they ought to be set relative to what Lee County's charging now?
Well, that's a really hot thing right now. I think we need to at least wait and consider what. Nobody really knows where Lee County is right now, so that's the first step in this process. I think, seeing if it fits for Estero. I'm in favor of impact fees. I've seen studies done that, you know, even adding $10,000–$12,000 to the price of a house is, you know, when you stretch that out over a full mortgage, is not, you know, it's not thousands and thousands of dollars a year or anything like that. I think the developers are going to want to be in Estero regardless, and I think we need to make sure that we're generating the funds to take care of some of our transportation issues that haven't been addressed up until this point, and there's a great need for it. My only concern with impact fees is, I think we need to explore to see if they're flexible enough. It'd be nice to have maybe one direction with development and a different one for businesses and so forth, and then maybe something different for housing.
You mentioned transportation issues that are not addressed so far. What are those?
Well, the three that are in the front of everybody's mind, I think, one is the east end of Corkscrew Road. It's only going to get worse. It just needs to be four lane out past Bellaterra, and there's other additional communities planned for east of Wildcat Run, and when you get out to the preserve and Bellaterra and the Corkscrew Shores and so forth like this, it's not safe. It's all of this. Even with our current ECCL transportation chairman, only got a right turn lane into Wildcat Run, and everybody was expecting, gee, after all this road construction and so forth, well, how's come that's all we ended up with? We have another issue coming out of the Island Club in the woodlands there, just west of I-75. It's an older population living back in there, and yet they've got to close their eyes and really take chances to go west out of their community. I don't know what the answer to that is, but that's a serious situation for our community. And I think there's some safety issues in other streets. Estero Parkway at least needs some lighting so that bikers and walkers can walk and bike safely. We need to work in our development efforts. We need to seek complete streets so that we have the maximum in safety, and and our citizens can feel free to get out and enjoy life here in Estero.
Gary, you've got a couple of opponents in your race. What separates you? What distinguishes you versus those other two candidates?
I think what separates me from the other two candidates is that I already have, number one, a relationship with the average Estero resident through Estero Lifestyle magazine, and I also have a connection to the area business owners, for the same reason. And I think we need to take everybody's interests into account when we're dealing with what's happening in our community. My whole purpose in engaging with business owners is to help them succeed, and I think they understand that. I mean, I've been going into the homes here and listening to their concerns for more than 4.5 years, and I think they trust and respect what we're doing and look forward to that. In fact, that's why one of the reasons I entered the race to begin with is I had so many readers come towards me and reach out and say, once it was for sure that the incorporation was going to be on the November ballot, say to me, you're so involved in the community on a day-to-day basis. We hope you're considering running for the village council. And even before they knew the parameters and the districts and all these other things, they were concerned. And I think I'll go back to my consensus building. I just plain get along with people, and I'm not antagonistic, and I'm not, I don't put people on the defensive. I think we've had plenty of that, and I think now's the time to come together because there are regional issues that Estero needs to be and should be involved in, and if we're not perceived to be at least a team player and open-minded enough to accept others' opinions, then we might not get invited to some of the conversations and be asked to participate.
Talked about your role with the magazine at the beginning and then here at the end too, as far as your connection with the community. Are there any scenarios you could envision where you would run into a conflict of interest being a publisher of a magazine in Estero versus serving on the village council?
Not that I can think of, and I've had this question posed a number of times, and I sit and I try to think. Again, we go back to one of your first questions in that, we're not, I don't even have an ad for the election in here, from myself or any of the other candidates. I'm trying to keep that as pure. Yes, in January we kind of explained it. There's a lot of confusion in the community. Most people still don't know that they're expected to vote for the 4 remaining districts. No matter how many times we say it, and the news media publishes it, and the broadcast media flashes it on TV, they're still coming up to me yet over the weekend and saying, "Gee, I wish I was in your district." And you got to say, well, you don't have to be in my district to vote for District 5 and the other three districts. That's not our purpose, and I don't see the business community in Estero having that strong of directional pull on the village council. Again, my job is with businesses, because this is not a subscription magazine. This is direct mail, so it is advertiser paid, and I'm trying to help businesses engage with the Estero community so they get the most success out of their efforts here in the area.
Just about out of time. Is there anything else you want to add, Gary, in conclusion?
Well, just that I'm looking, I'm very seriously looking for the community to seriously consider me for candidate for District 5. I am an independent working individual. I do my work out of my home and mostly my car, and so I'm out and involved in the process, and I do have the time to invest in this job. I think we need to get Estero off to the best footing. I think we need to make sure that the 7 candidates that are elected onto that village council have a diverse representation of our community, and I think that will make us for a stronger representation to each other and to our community, as well as to Lee County and as well.
Okay, thank you, Gary.